All right. Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches a todos. Welcome to our monthly meeting of the International Border Community Steering Committee. Bienvenidos a la reunión del Comité Directivo de la Comunidad Fronteriza Internacional. Just to get us started, we are going to provide the interpretation instructions, both in English and in Spanish. Vamos a proveer las instrucciones para acceder a los servicios de interpretación, tanto en inglés como en español. Voy a empezar en inglés. I'm going to start with instructions in English. To access interpretation services, if you are joining from your computer, please locate the interpretation button that will be on the bottom of your screen. This is in the form of a globe. If you click on that icon, you will be prompted to choose English or Spanish. And for those folks who speak English, please select the English channel and you should be set. If you're joining through your tablet or smartphone, please locate the menu button that is represented by those three dots on your screen, and then you will be able to choose language interpretation services. After you choose language interpretation services, you can choose English from those options. Ahora voy a proveer las instrucciones en español. Si nos está acompañando desde su computadora para poder acceder a la interpretación, haga clic en el icono con forma de globo de Interpretation que está en la parte baja de su pantalla. Después de ahí puede seleccionar English o Spanish, inglés o español. En este caso, si usted habla español, seleccione el canal de español. Si nos acompaña a través de su tableta o smartphone, favor de localizar el menú en el icono de 3 puntos que aparece en su pantalla. De ahí puede seleccionar Language Interpretation o interpretación del lenguaje. Y después puede seleccionar el idioma español. Nuestro canal de interpretación están activados, así que podemos iniciar ahora. We have activated our language interpretation channels, so we can go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce a new team member for APCD. Please welcome Monique Lopez to our team. Monique is going to join us in the Office of Environmental Justice for the Air Pollution Control District. And they're going to be joining us every meeting and helping us run these meetings and really manage the implementation of our community air protection program and our framework for our Office of Environmental Justice. We are very excited to have Monique. Monique has a lot of experience with environmental justice issues, and we're just very happy to have you on board, Monique. So at this point, I'll just turn it over to you, and welcome again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Domingo. And it's great to be here with you all. And I really appreciate each one of you for spending your evening with us. I know that there could be a lot of other things that are important in your lives that you all could be spending time and with those folks and doing those things. So we really appreciate the care and consideration you have for your community to be part of these conversations as well.
Monique, sorry for the interruption. Gloria and Vicky, we can hear both of you doing the interpretation on the Spanish channel. So if you wanna decide which one of you goes first, or if one of you wants to go to the English channel and the other one to the Spanish, but we can hear you both on the Spanish right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you all for the warm welcome as well. Domingo, is everything good on the Spanish channel now?
I think we're still hearing both translators. Okay.
All right, so are we good now?
Okay, we're good. We're good now. Yes, we're good now. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. It would not be a Zoom meeting unless we had a few hiccups at the beginning. So I feel very welcome into the Zoom space right now. I'd love to get to know each one of you. I see some familiar names and faces of folks that I've worked with before in the past. And I hope to, in December and in January, reach out to each one of you and schedule a one-on-one to hear more, learn more about you, your interest in being part of this committee, but also, learn more about the community priorities that you have as well, and that you'd like to bring as part of this committee as well. So I'll be reaching out to each of you in early December and schedule some short one-on-one time so that we can get to know each other a bit better, and you can ask me any questions too about myself and my background as well. So I won't take too much time today to share that. But all I'll share is that I've been in the environmental justice space for about the past 16 years, but probably more so longer than that. I grew up in Imperial County in what was also called an environmental justice community. I didn't know what that term meant, but my body knew what that term meant. The bodies of my friends and family understood what that term meant. So I've been part of this work much longer than what I knew what the terminology was. And much longer than I've been professionally, just because of where I grew up as well. And so looking forward to sharing more of that during our one-on-one. Before we get started and jump into the agenda and the objectives for today, I just want to make sure we do a quick roll call just to make sure that we have folks on the line. So I'm going to do a roll call here, and if I call your name, say here or presente, and I just want to make sure that we have folks here today. So let's see, Olga. No? Okay. Manuela.
Perdón, aquí estoy presente. Gracias.
Oh, sí,
Gracias.
sí, no está bien. Manuela, Wendy, Rudy, okay. Juan Miguel, okay. Jason, okay. Margarita, okay. Mariano.
Present.
All right. Alejandro.
Here.
All right. Stan. Leslie.
Here.
Right. Jenny.
Here.
Great. Diane. Okay. Shelby. Okay. Oh, I saw that Wendy put present in the chat box there. Irma.
Aquí.
Okay, all right. Phil. Okay. And is there someone from Sandag here on behalf of Zach? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let's see. Christopher.
Present.
Right. Yanet. Maria. Marie. Mauricio. Guadalupe. Marisela.
Here.
Oh, Marisela. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. David. Trinidad. Lee. Elsa. And Geraldo. All right. So if they join the meeting, I'll hope to catch them as they join in as well. Oh, okay, I see that. Unidad. Gracias. Thank you. And Elsa. Thank you so much. Okay.
And Monique, so Trinidad, Elsa, and Zach are on the attendee list. They'll need to be promoted to panelists.
Sounds good.
I was trying to, but it doesn't allow me to do it.
Oh, with your status, let me go ahead
Yeah.
and get them, let them in here.
Okay,
1 second.
so it would be Wendy, Trinidad, Zach. Oh, and also David Soderman.
Okay, let me do that as well. I think I got everyone. Let me just double check here as well. And so let's see. Is there anyone, Domingo, that you're seeing in the attendee list that I need to promote that I haven't yet? I think I got everyone that you mentioned.
Yes, I think we're good. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us. So again, welcome. We have, as usual, a pretty full agenda. We have a couple of presentations we're going to be hearing from Kathy Kian from San Diego Air Pollution Control District, who's going to be sharing more about the community air protection incentive or program incentives and how that is connected to the community emission reduction program that you all are active members in helping co-create. We're also going to be hearing a presentation or a pre-recorded presentation from Nick, who's also from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District, which is going to be talking about really the San Diego Regional Air Quality Strategy and how proposes to address ozone. What are those proposals to address ozone and why it's important to community health and also addressing climate change as well. So that'll be a recorded conversation. During these two presentations, folks certainly welcome questions and comments after the presentations as well. If there's something that you're interested in learning more about, certainly the presenters welcome that towards the end of the presentation. After that, we will go into what we're calling on our agenda, share and listen. We want to share back with you all what we heard in the last two sessions or the last two meetings with you all in terms of your air quality concerns, priorities, locations for monitoring, or locations that have been places where that you've experienced air pollution. And so we'll have a chance for you all to share more on those things, but also to hear from us what we heard and making sure that we got our notes right. Did we get it right? Did we miss something? Is there something else we should be including as well as part of this conversation? And then we'll have public comments and closing remarks as well. And then hopefully be able to adjourn by 7 p.m. So we have a pretty packed agenda. But before I move us towards the first presentation with Kathy, I believe there is going to be a general update by Yanju Chen with the California Air Resources Board. So Yanju.
Thank you, Monique. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great, thank you. So hello everyone, just want to provide a really quick update for CARB's San Isidro 1-year monitoring pilot project, which we presented at the July and October CSC meeting. The project includes monitoring at fixed locations and short-term monitoring with a mobile van. So for the fixed monitoring, we had a very productive site tour on October 20th after we attended our in-person CSC meeting last time on October the 19th, and we were able to cover most of the locations we plan to visit. Many thanks to Alejandro for your help, support, and riding with us during the tour. Thank you so much, appreciate it. Based on the feedback from the community and the actual site conditions, we're now trying to coordinate with property owners and the city of San Diego for the 8 site locations. And we'll report back once we have the locations finalized. You may be aware we conducted air monitoring with a mobile van in the community last week. We did that measurement from November 7th to November 11th. Unfortunately, we had to conclude our study earlier because of the equipment malfunction. So we collected, we collected 5 days of data, and now we are in the process to analyze the data, and we're also looking to fix the instrument because it is essential to monitor like toxic air pollutants in the community. So we'll hope we can go back, return to the community later once we have our equipment fixed, and if it is helpful for the district and for the community, and if weather permits in the future. But now we are evaluating the data we already collected, and we want to understand what we can tell from the data collected, and how we can refine where we want to conduct additional measurements. So that's a quick update. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yanju. I just want to see if folks have any questions or comments regarding the update that was just shared before we move on to the first presentation. We appreciate CARB staff being here today to provide that update. Yeah, we look forward to continue to work with them as well. Seeing that there aren't any questions or comments on that, I'm gonna actually go ahead and turn it over to Kathy to share our first presentation. So I'll stop sharing the screen and turn it over to Kathy.
Okay, we'll see if we can make the technology work. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm really excited. This is my first meeting with this group, and I'm very excited to meet you all and hear what you have to say tonight. Let me see if I can make this, do the slideshow, and come on. All right. It's got my presentation on top of slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Can you all see that all right?
We can see it on the screen. Thanks, Kathy.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you all for being here. So as Monique mentioned, my name's Kathy Kean. I manage our planning, incentives, and rural development teams here at the Air District. And tonight I'm going to focus talking about incentives, which is the best part of my job, providing funding to create improved air quality in our neighborhoods. All right, let me see if I can. Why is technology being so bratty to me today? All right, there we go. So the AB 617 program has many different aspects, but for this conversation, we're going to talk about 2 main categories. AB 617 implementation funding, which is used for monitoring, planning, creating the SERP that Monique was talking about, and other activities that are associated with AB 617. And then the other aspect that we'll talk about, and that's most of my presentation today, is about incentives funding, Community Air Protection Program, or CAP funding. That's funding that can be used to provide incentives for projects that improve air quality in the most disadvantaged communities, or can protect people from the effects of air pollution in their communities. So as I mentioned in the last slide, the incentives funding in general can be used to pay for projects that reduce air pollution. These projects usually have been funded through state and federal programs in the past. You may have heard of some, like the Carl Moyer program. We'll talk more about these a little later in the presentation. I wanted to mention here too that incentive funds can also be used for projects that protect people from air pollution. For example, we've used funds, incentive funding to establish an air purifier program to provide monitors and filters to residents in our Portside community. Other AB 617 communities have funded projects that establish truck routes, that create school flag programs or tree planting, other kinds of projects that benefit their communities. So let's talk a little bit about those traditional incentive programs from the past. We've focused our funding in the region on projects that replace older diesel equipment with newer, cleaner machines. These projects provide direct emission reductions for the communities where the equipment works and to the workers who operate that equipment. Our traditional programs have covered all sorts of mobile equipment, trucks, buses, construction equipment, agricultural equipment, boats, locomotives, forklifts, pretty much anything that moves around and is powered by diesel has been considered for programs at one point or another. So these traditional programs have to abide by strict guidelines that are set up for the use of public money and to ensure the emission reductions are permanent, enforceable, quantifiable, and surplus above and beyond that required by regulations. To do these things, the programs usually require strict documentation from the applicants, numerous inspections and checks, requirements to scrap the old equipment so it cannot pollute again, and cost effectiveness limits that restrict the amount of funding available per project. In creating the AB 617 incentive programs, the state and local districts realized that traditional programs just did not always meet the needs of the local communities. Seeing this, the AB 617 incentives allow for traditional equipment replacement projects, like in the Moyer program, but with slightly higher eligibility amounts. You can get more money per project for AB 617 programs. The program also included new project categories like air quality improvement projects at schools and the ability to provide incentives for certain stationary sources, things that don't move in the community. The AB 617 incentive program also allows communities to be innovative and create community identified projects. For example, we're working with the port to roll out a zero emission truck pilot project, which grew out of conversations with the Portside Steering Committee and their priority to focus on zero emission trucks. There's a process in AB 617 to work with communities to identify projects, work on guidelines, which are then approved by the California Air Resources Board and implemented by the local air district. So for the San Diego program, we receive approximately $18 million a year for incentive funding for AB 617 to spend region-wide throughout the county of San Diego. The state guidelines for the program require at least 70% of that funding to be spent on projects that benefit disadvantaged communities that are defined by the state or designated communities like the international border. 80% of the funding must be spent on projects that benefit low-income communities as defined by Assembly Bill 1550. That's the blue areas on this map. The district has requirements to spend the funding within certain deadlines. That's typically 4 years from when we receive the funding. 4 years sounds like a long time, but for projects that are unusual or innovative, this is a fairly challenging timeline, and we're often in a hurry. I wanted to talk a little bit about the connection between the Community Emission Reduction Plan, the CERP, and the incentives for the community. The CERP is a really important process for the community and the Air District and CARB, and it does several things for us. It provides a mechanism for community conversation about what's needed to improve air quality. It provides a plan for cooperation across different agencies, and it informs and sets the priorities for the incentive projects, including those community identified projects. It provides the mechanism to create those community identified projects and those programs can work directly to address the air quality concerns that you all are most concerned about. As this group moves forward on the creation of the CERP, we'll work together to make sure incentives are considered in the overall plan. I did want to take a minute to talk about some of the other incentive programs. Although AB 617 is a very important incentive mechanism for communities, there's many other programs that provide incentives for residents and businesses in the border community that are available as well. Oops, I went too fast. So for example, like I mentioned before, the Portside Air Quality Improvement and Relief Program, the PAIR program for air monitors and purifiers. That could be a model for a similar program here at the border communities. We also have programs to encourage people to scrap their old cars, our scrap program. Programs to help install electric vehicle chargers for passenger cars, the Cali VIP program. And we're planning to open a Clean Cars for All program here very soon to help low-income residents access hybrid and zero-emission cars. The state also is running several programs to incentivize clean equipment or fueling infrastructure for that equipment. So these programs all have different requirements. They have different areas of focus. They have different processes. They have different levels of funding to make our job exciting, to try and figure out how we can make sure that this funding is making it into the communities that need it the most. We're anticipating that these programs will only continue to grow. So we have our work cut out for us. There's also federal funding for at the US federal level. There's existing programs such as the Diesel Emission Reduction Act that provides federal funding for equipment replacement projects like we talked about before. It also provides tax rebates for people who purchase or lease electric vehicles. And we're really anticipating that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act actions that are happening at the federal level are going to provide more funding for projects that improve air quality, particularly in environmental justice communities. We don't know what those programs look like yet, but we're paying attention and working with our federal partners to learn and hopefully attract more of that funding to our region. So for our local, circling back to our local AB 617 incentive funding, the way that works is we run a yearly request for applications for projects, and we anticipate that that's going to happen in early 2023. We're targeting January to roll out that call for projects. We'll be working with your group, this group here, to create a process to receive feedback about those applications and set funding priorities and goals for the border community. We'll also be working with you all on the larger conversations as the SERP progresses. So I know that was a super brief overview of incentive funding, but I wanted to give us some time to see if you had questions or comments or concerns about our incentive programs. So I'm going to end the slideshow and stop sharing and maybe take some of your questions. Oh, good. Now I can see you all again. Yay. So you guys have a list? You're ready to spend all this incentive money? What can we start working on?
I see Christopher.
Hi, Kathy. My name is Chris Roberts. I work at TruckNet. I'm a project manager here in Otay. My primary responsibility has been to sort of transition diesel trucks over to a Class 8 CNG station that we're building. We also have 3 EV chargers, and we're also looking at a hydrogen station. We've been in communication with the port as well to try to get a hydrogen station going. Does the APCD plan to continue assigning funds to CNG trucks and CNG infrastructure for those clients that have long haul needs and needs that cannot be met by current hydrogen or electric technology?
That's an excellent question, Chris. And part of that is dependent on community feedback about those sorts of projects. We certainly have funded a lot of low emission natural gas trucks in the past, and we know they need places to fuel up. And so we certainly expect that if there's demand there, we would accept applications and they're eligible for funding. We're anxious to hear from the community what the priorities are for that funding. If we have enough money, we could fund everything. If there are limited resources, we'd have to rely on the community to help us determine what those highest priorities are.
Understood. Thank you.
I see Alejandro.
Yeah, so I didn't see it in the presentation, so I'm not entirely sure if the county is giving incentives for that, but would school buses, electric school buses be part of those incentives? Or if it's a priority for the community, could it be included as one of the incentive programs?
Electric school buses in general and electric school buses in particular are eligible for incentive funding. And we're very excited about those projects. We think that they have a lot of benefits for our community, for kids. We're really excited about those. They cost a lot of money. And so we know that school districts need all the help they can get to access those. So the short answer is yes, they are eligible. And yes, please encourage your local school districts to apply.
Thank you. And could you give us that information of like a link or something specific on where to apply?
I sure can. I can provide a link in the chat that'll take you to our AB 617 Moyer page on the Air District's website, and that should give you a place to start.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Mariana.
Hi, how has the relative success of past programs kind of been measured to see which ones have been most effective?
For our traditional equipment replacement programs, we calculate a cost effectiveness number for those. We look at the amount of pollution that's caused by the old equipment and the amount of pollution generated by the new equipment, and we compare that to the dollars that we've spent to finish that project. And so we typically rank projects on that cost effectiveness scale. We want to make the best use of the funds that we have available. So typically we score them on a cost effectiveness metric. That doesn't always work for incentive or for infrastructure projects. That doesn't work because the emission reductions are kind of indirect, but we know that they're essential for us to make that transition to new equipment. I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
These are really great questions. Let's go
They
back
are.
to Christopher. Yeah.
Yes, Kathy, are you also in charge of disincentives? I know that I know that there was talk of a sort of fine for an indirect fine on companies hiring transportation companies that use primarily diesel trucks. So say as if you're a broker and you hired a transportation company and they came to your warehouse with a diesel truck, then there would be a fine or a fee that would be somehow charged for using that diesel truck versus a CNG truck, an electric truck, or a hydrogen truck. Have you touched upon that at all, or do you have any information in relation to that?
I'm not sure. Well, I'll take a step back and say I'm in the incentive business, not so much the disincentive business. Our compliance, both at the local and state level, do try to manage and find folks who are not abiding by the regulations as they exist right now. We want to make sure that everybody's has a level playing field and everybody's abiding by the same regulations. That having been said, the district is looking at what we're calling an indirect source rule, which would then encourage cleaner technologies for those kinds of sources. It's kind of hard to explain, and I'm not very practiced at it, so I'm going to give it a try, and forgive me if I'm a little garbled. There are places in the county that attract more truck traffic than other places, warehouses, ports, airports, things like that. And we know that truck traffic has impacts on those communities. And so we're in the early stages of trying to figure out if there's an opportunity to create a regulation that helps incentivize or requires those sources to move to cleaner technology. We're very early days on those conversations right now, and we would look forward to, we really want to talk to the community groups about what they think a regulation like that might want to or need to look like. But so please contact me and we can have some conversations about that.
Thank you. I think that was actually specifically what I was talking about, the indirect source rule.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Any final questions or comments for Kathy? And I know, Kathy, you're going to actually, I think you may have already, but put a link in the chat box when you get a moment.
I'm gonna do that as soon as I'm not on camera chatting with you guys, and I'm gonna put my contact information in that chat as well. So if any of you have any questions about our incentive programs or would like more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is a really important aspect of what we do, and we really want to work with you and answer your questions about it. So please don't be shy.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And we'll actually be seeing a lot more of Kathy throughout this process as well, as the community starts to identify what those, priorities are in terms of where those incentive dollars can go within the community to reduce emissions and make the air healthier for the community as well. So this won't be the last you see of Kathy. She will be a returning visitor as well. So thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you.
With that, we're actually going to go towards a second presentation. We're going to try to do this via video. This presentation was pre-recorded, and if for some reason we're having technical difficulties in terms of the video not working or interpretation not working properly, we also have Nick here who can also step in if need be. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up the video here.
Monique, if I could just
Absolutely.
give a couple quick words, and I thank you, everyone. Just wanted to introduce myself. I don't think I've spoken up at this committee before, but I did want to just apologize that I caught whatever's going around, and it was my intent to do this live. I just don't think my vocal cords are going to be able to do it over a 15-20 minute presentation. So I am available for questions afterwards. Hopefully we can get this working. But I did do this exact presentation to the Portside Steering Committee just a few weeks ago. So hopefully it works. If not, I can attempt to do it live, and just bear with me if I have a coughing fit or something. So with that, I can take any questions at the end of the video. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for being here, and we wish you well, and hope that this will work to give your voice a rest. Let me try it here. 1 second.
Brought up, I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today to present on this. Again, my name is Nick Cormier, and I'll be providing a brief overview of the draft 2022 RACs that was released for public comment yesterday. We understand nobody's had a chance to read it fully at this point, but we wanted to present to the Portside Steering Committee today to provide an opportunity to learn about the document and provide feedback. Just a note that we'll be conducting another public workshop on Zoom to discuss the 2022 air quality strategy in greater detail. That workshop is scheduled for Wednesday, November 9th at 4 p.m. and it will be held on Zoom, and there will be other opportunities throughout the month of November to also provide public feedback in other forums. So just wanted to share that before we getting started. Next slide, please. It's first important to understand what causes ozone pollution. Ozone pollution forms when common air pollutants emitted by vehicles, off-road equipment, factories, consumer products, and other sources chemically react under sunlight and heat. San Diego County's topography makes it well suited to ozone formation. Air pollution is emitted along the coastline and blows eastward, where it cooks under sunlight to form ozone. It then gets trapped against our local mountains and results in higher ozone levels in our inland valleys and foothills. Thus, the district's ozone monitor at Alpine regularly exhibits higher ozone levels than coastal areas in the region. Ground level ozone is harmful to breathe and is regulated as an air pollutant at the state and federal levels. It irritates and inflames air passageways, and typical symptoms include headache, cough, shortness of breath, and chest tightness when taking a deep breath. Children and seniors are at increased risk of health impacts, and so are people with existing lung disease and those who spend time outdoors. And because ozone is fueled by sunshine, ozone concentrations are highest in the spring and summer months. Next slide, please. APCD is part of a coordinated three-tiered approach to regulating and cleaning up ozone and other air pollution. The US EPA regulates emissions from interstate traveling sources, including airplanes, trains, and ships. CARB regulates emissions from on-road and off-road vehicles within California, as well as consumer products we use every day, such as personal care products and household cleaners. APCD has primary responsibility for regulating local stationary sources of air pollution. These include large industrial facilities like power plants and landfills, but also smaller establishments like gas stations and dry cleaners. Next slide, please. It's important to characterize emissions in a way that may be more understandable to those not intimately involved in air quality every day. To do this, consider the following comparison as we use the term of tons per day. 1 ton of NOx emissions emitted per day is approximately equal to the same amount of NOx emissions being emitted from approximately 350,000 average passenger cars per day. Next slide, please. To understand where the region is going, it's important to understand how much progress the region has made. Ozone precursor emissions, specifically volatile organic compounds, or VOC, and oxides of nitrogen, or NOx, have been trending downward as a result of clean air actions taken over the past 60 years at the local, state, and federal levels. This chart shows that VOC and NOx emissions in San Diego County have dropped 56% just since the year 2000, equivalent to a reduction of 240 tons per day. In fact, ozone precursor emissions in San Diego County are now at their lowest levels on record. Next slide, please. These emission reductions have resulted in improved regional air quality. This chart shows the region's 8-hour ozone level as measured at the Alpine Monitoring Station, where ozone levels have trended downward. There is year-to-year variability caused by hotter weather. However, these upticks only reflect a flattening of progress as opposed to a significant change in the wrong direction. Despite the progress made, it's clear that additional work is needed in order to meet the state 8-hour ozone standard, shown by the red line on the chart, and to further protect public health. Next slide, please. This chart and the one on the following slide show the top 10 sources of ozone precursor emissions in San Diego County. Recent scientific modeling has demonstrated that NOx emissions are the key driver of regional ozone pollution formation, and mobile sources generate over 90% of regional NOx emissions. All of the region's top sources of NOx are mobile sources, including ships, off-road equipment, heavy-duty trucks, aircraft, and passenger vehicles. All of these sources are regulated at the state and federal levels by CARB and EPA. Next slide, please. Mobile sources are also some of the largest emitters of VOC, including off-road equipment, boats, passenger cars, and aircraft. However, the largest region-wide source of VOC is consumer products, such as personal care products and household cleaners, which are also regulated by CARB. Other categories the district can and does regulate through adopted local rules. These categories include architectural coatings, such as paints and stains, miscellaneous coatings, petroleum and gas fueling activities, printing, and adhesives. Next slide, please. San Diego County is currently designated as a non-attainment area for state and federal ozone standards. As seen on this map, many of the populated regions of California are also non-attainment for state ozone standards. Because the region is non-attainment, Health and Safety Code requires APCD to prepare a plan to attain the state standards. These standards, also known as health-based standards, define the maximum amount of outdoor ozone allowable to avoid harming public health, averaged over a specific time period. At the state level, CARB has set these levels at 0.070 parts per million, or ppm, over an 8-hour period, and 0.09 parts per million over a 1-hour period. Next slide, please. APCD's plan to attain state ozone standards is known locally as the Regional Air Quality Strategy, or RAQS. Initially adopted in 1992 and last updated in 2016, it's periodically updated pursuant to state law as new emission control measures become technologically feasible, improve air quality, or protect public health. Health and Safety Code requires APCD to consider and, if warranted, adopt all feasible measures that can reduce ozone-forming emissions from stationary sources under our regulatory authority. Individual measures included in the RACs are evaluated and, if warranted, developed into proposed local rules through a public process. Each revision of the RACs requires approval by the APCD Governing Board and submittal to CARB. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACs provides a new framework that is more understandable, less technical, and digs into topics that stakeholders want to know about. It is built around a purpose and vision, as foreseen by APCD, that describes the requirements of the RACs and where we think the region may be heading. We then discuss topics that have not been included in previous RACs updates, such as ozone's relationship with public health, under-resourced communities, greenhouse gases and climate change, and mobile sources. We finally discuss APCD's updated local ozone pollution control strategy with measures APCD will be evaluating over the next 3 to 6 years. Next slide, please. Though the 2022 RACs must primarily address ozone, we can also have parallel goals that address other sources of air pollution. The two overarching goals in the document are to protect public health and to protect the climate. To accomplish them, the 2022 RACs first focuses on direct emission reductions of ozone precursors, namely NOx and VOC. Concurrently, the RACs also considers co-benefits and indirect emission reductions of GHGs and PM where applicable. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACs also describes how ozone and other air pollutants impact your health. As mentioned, unhealthy levels of air pollution can cause a wide variety of health impacts. These impacts and health effects are comprised of the following factors. First is the amount of pollutants being emitted. Next is how much or the concentration of that air pollutant is being measured in the air. Third is how much of the population is being exposed to the pollutants in the air, including the frequency and duration. And fourth is its dosage, which is how much of the pollutant is absorbed into the body. The resulting health effects for individuals are based on the preceding factors. Next slide, please. For the first time, the 2022 RACs presents ozone information in some of our region's under-resourced communities. In particular, the RACs looks at two communities, Portside and the International Border Community, that are now in CARB's Community Air Protection Program. The tables on the screen identify census tracts that comprise each community, as well as their CalEnviroscreen score. The tables also include each tract's overall ozone percentile score in bold, which compares ozone levels in each tract against all others in California. For both communities, all but one tract have ozone scores below 30%, meaning these areas experience ozone levels that are lower than 60 to 75% of other census tracts found in California. This trend is consistent with our understanding of how ozone forms in San Diego County, with much of it occurring in the inland foothill areas. While this is encouraging, these same areas can and do still exceed health-based ozone standards on certain days and times. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACs also looks at mobile ozone monitoring data collected in 2019 by ACLIMA on Priuses within the Portside community. During the 9-month study period, ozone level data was collected along most streets in the area and never exceeded 40 parts per billion, or 0.040 parts per million. Again, this is encouraging, given that the health-based ozone standard set by the state is 70 parts per billion, or 0.070 parts per million. However, ozone exceedances can and do still occur on occasion, and other air pollution impacts from diesel particulate matter and toxic air contaminants still do occur. This is why APCD and other local agencies are working to improve the quality of life in these areas and other under-resourced communities. Next slide, please. Next, the 2022 RACs discusses ozone's complicated relationship with greenhouse gases and climate change. Ozone is technically a greenhouse gas and a criteria air pollutant. And with climate change happening before our eyes, it's still unclear if hotter sorry, do we have a, oh, I think someone might be talking. So I'll go ahead and start again. It's unclear if hotter temperatures will impact future ozone levels. Global emission reductions, reduced transport, variable short-term climate projections, and potential for changes in ozone mixing heights all create uncertainty in predicting how climate change may impact such levels. The fourth National Climate Assessment, completed in 2018, studied this dynamic and determined that results will vary by region. Their study concluded San Diego County would see very minimal impacts to ozone levels by 2050 and 2090, resulting in possible increases of around 0.002 parts per million or lower. Though this isn't insignificant, this predicted increase is likely to be counterbalanced by future emission reductions through additional regulations, incentives, and fleet turnover. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACS also describes new opportunities where APCD could further reduce GHGs and describes where APCD thinks the region may be heading by 2045. New opportunities include new incentive programs at APCD that are on the horizon, including programs that was mentioned earlier today to purchase commercial zero-emission lawn and garden equipment, and our forthcoming Clean Cars for All program to purchase EVs in under-resourced communities. It also involves working together with regional partners and collaboratives to assist in implementing policies that support regional initiatives, such as the county's regional decarbonization framework. These new opportunities will support a region that will be transformed by 2045 to have a local economy powered by clean, renewable electricity, a transportation sector led by ZEVs and active transportation options, carbon-free buildings that are infill to avoid suburban sprawl and located near transit, and natural lands that are preserved as carbon sinks. Combined, these efforts will further reduce emissions to tackle our region's ozone and climate change challenges at the same time. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACS also describes how the district is addressing ozone pollution from mobile sources, since they comprise over 60% of total precursor emissions in the county. While CARB has implemented the strictest controls on mobile sources in the nation, APCD also reduces mobile source emissions in non-regulatory ways. These include our robust incentive program, which has provided over $157 million in funding since 1999 and reduced over 13 tons of emissions per day in that same time frame. It also includes our mobile source enforcement program to assist CARB in implementing state regulations, and our forthcoming strategy to reduce mobile source emissions from indirect sources like ports and warehouses. Such efforts further technology advancement, help local businesses, and help the region attain ozone standards in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Moving forward, APCD will look at additional ways where we can reduce emissions from mobile and other sources of pollution that are still within our regulatory authority. These include enhanced opportunities for outreach and education, development of regional best practices, developing partnerships with regional and private entities, and advocating at the legislative level when needed. It also includes APCD's continued support of transportation control measures that are implemented by SANDAG to support state and federal air quality plans. These TCMs expand transit options, van and carpool programs, biking and walking facilities, and traffic signal improvements, just to name a few. Next slide, please. The 2016 RACS revision set forth a number of proposed measures to further reduce ozone precursor emissions. 7 measures were adopted or amended, as shown on the screen. Together, these measures resulted in ozone precursor emission reductions of 2.3 tons per day. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACS proposes to schedule and adopt or amend up to 8 additional rules to further reduce NOx and VOC directly and GHG and PM indirectly over the next 3 years. These measures include some that are required by federal or state law, such as our forthcoming landfill flare rule, and further controls of gas turbine and stationary engines to reflect updated EPA startup and shutdown policies. It also includes measures that are included in the portside SERP, such as restaurant cooking operations, marine coatings, and a possible indirect source rule. On the right side of the chart, you'll see that we've categorized the possible emission reductions and preliminary costs to implement for each of these measures, though further refinement will be needed during the rule development process. Together, if all of the proposed scheduled measures are adopted or amended, APCD anticipates the measures will further reduce ozone precursor emissions by at least 0.6 additional tons per day. All of the fossil fuel combustion measures, if adopted, will also inevitably result in indirect reductions of GHGs and PM. Next slide, please. APCD also looked at additional measures that are not yet ready to schedule as proposed measures and require further analysis over the next 3 years. These possible measures require more time to assess and are not likely to be scheduled for possible adoption until the next RACS update is completed. These measures include further controlling categories we already regulate, such as metal parts, bulk plants and terminals, aerospace coatings, and adhesives. It also includes several new categories the district has not regulated yet, including metalworking fluids and miscellaneous small sources of NOx. We'll also assess non-traditional categories for possible emission reduction opportunities, such as a possible state emission offset permitting program, zero emission furnaces and water heaters, and more controls on region-wide wood burning activity. Since these measures require more analysis, anticipated emission reductions and cost effectiveness are not yet known. Next slide, please. One of the attachments in the 2022 RACS we wanted to highlight was attachment L, which is a reevaluation demonstrating that state-based emission offsets are not required to attain state ozone standards. Emission offsets are created when a company is required to compensate for an increase in emissions in one area by decreasing emissions in another area. APCD previously had a state emission offset threshold in place, but it was repealed in the late 90s, and the no net increase, or NNI approach, was used. This demonstration reviews emission reductions at existing stationary facilities in prior years and compares it to new emissions from new or modified stationary sources of air pollution. So long as emissions from existing facilities outweigh any emission growth, a state offset program is not required under state law. The district has included a no net increase demonstration in each RACS update since 1998 as required. The 2022 RACS includes another demonstration and has once again determined that state emission offset thresholds remain unnecessary to attain state ozone standards as early as practicable. However, to ensure the district is prepared for any challenges in preparing this demonstration in the future, the 2022 RACS also includes a further study measure to consider reinstituting the state emission offset threshold and a corresponding offset program in the future. Next slide, please. Altogether, the 2022 RACS includes a robust ozone pollution control strategy through 2026 that will achieve additional and direct emission reductions beyond what was included in the previous RACS revision. It will also indirectly reduce GHGs and PM as a result of the scheduled and further study measures. The anticipated emission reductions from the scheduled measures are expected to annually reduce numerous cases of negative health endpoints like asthma and over 800 lost work or activity days. At the same time, these measures are anticipated to contribute as much as $18 million to the local economy from avoided healthcare costs and lost productivity. Next slide, please. The 2022 RACS also includes an environmental analysis prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The prepared EIR addendum is also available for review and comment through November 30th. The 1992 RACS EIR found that any potential adverse environmental impacts would be mitigated below a level of significance. Several supplements, negative declarations, and EIR addendums have followed that analysis whenever the RACS has been updated, and all found that no substantial impacts would result as a result of the RACS and that no EIR revision is necessary. The 2022 RACS EIR addendum comes to the same conclusion, that no revision to the EIR is required because no significant adverse impacts are anticipated. Next slide, please. Here's a tentative timeline of the next steps in the RACS process. We held a kickoff workshop this time last year to start discussing the proposed concepts and measures you heard about today. We also incorporated feedback received from our governing board members at a presentation back in June. We released the draft RACS document and CEQA analysis yesterday, and today is the first of a few presentations we are giving over the next month to get feedback. We'll be presenting at the Sandag Region Conformity Working Group on November 2nd, and also presenting to the International Border Community Steering Committee on November 16th. Our main APCD RACS workshop will be held on Zoom on November 9th, and will include Spanish translation services. As mentioned, our comment deadline is November 30th for both documents. After incorporating and responding to feedback through a workshop report by the end of this year, the district will then submit the RACS to our governing board's consideration in March 2023, followed by submittal to CARB if approved. Next slide, please. If you want to stay up to date on this process or other federal air quality planning processes, I highly encourage everyone to visit the website at the tiny URL link on the screen. That will bring you to APCD's air quality planning webpage where the 2022 RACS can be downloaded, as well as our other federal ozone plans. The same website also includes some fact sheets that you can download to discuss facts about ozone in your region, as well as some simple ways that you can reduce air pollution in your home. My contact information is on the screen, as well as my supervisor, Kathy Kian, who you all know. And in case you have any questions, concerns, or need to follow up with us after this presentation or at any point. Next slide, please. And that's all I have today. Thank you again for allowing me to be here, and I'd be happy to take any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, Irma. Sí, por favor.
Nos podría mandar el link por medio de correo o algo para verificar la página, para revisarla bien.
Yes, I will drop the link right now I'll drop a direct link to the document right now. I was just about to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that link that I just put there in the chat is it'll take you directly to the RACS document itself, and then I can also post a link to the web page where it's held, the one that was linked in the presentation.
Okay, muchas gracias.
No problem.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any other questions or comments? I know that was certainly a lot to take in one sitting.
Monique, I see a comment by Jenny in the chat. I don't know if are we reading those out, or how are we doing that?
Yes, we can. I will go. Thank you for letting me know. Give me the heads up. So Jenny asked, can we ask questions on Nick's presentations? Absolutely. So Jenny, why don't, if you are available, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, thank you, Nick, for a really great overview. And as somebody who grew up in San Diego County many years ago, we've made huge strides on ozone, and I'm really appreciative of that. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the ACLIMA data, which was the mobile monitoring data on ozone, because I'm not an atmospheric chemist and I haven't been trained in that, but my understanding is that ozone, even if present in the air, will react with various gases from cars and trucks and become much lower near roadways. So if you took ozone measurement on either side of the roadway and right in the middle of the roadway, the ozone would be much lower in the middle of the roadway because of that reaction. So I'm not sure I would take that mobile monitoring data to say that ozone is lower in the communities, to be honest, without more investigation. But that was just a quick comment, and thank you for a very nice presentation.
Sure, thank you, Jenny, and that's actually a great comment. And I think I understand where you're going with that. I think in the context of the document, it's just more of a there's a number of things we're looking at in that particular section. That was just one data point that we wanted to point to, especially with respect to that particular presentation, which was geared, for the Portside community, where that data was available. But that's a great comment, and that's something we can consider adding some context to in the final document to make sure that information is presented appropriately, because I think I understand where you're going with that, and we'll have to do some digging to see if that effect is present, especially near roadways, which in that area certainly could be the case. So yeah, thank you.
And if I may chime in, hi, I'm David Soderman. I'm the chief of the monitoring division. Jenny, you're absolutely right. If you're measuring ozone on a road, on a busy road, it is suppressed compared to as you get further and further away from the road. So we'll definitely, add language to it to reflect that. I think the point of that whole ACMA was to see if there's, not maybe look at the absolute numbers, but look at the relative numbers. And to see if there's higher areas and in the area compared to other areas within the same area, if that makes sense. But yes, you're absolutely right that ozone is scavenged by road emissions.
I had one more question since I have the floor kind of. I'm sorry. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. My other question was that we share an air basin with Tijuana. And so you showed the VOC emissions from consumer products or the, NO2 emissions from ships, but are you taking into account emissions from Tijuana, especially VOCs, and what is the largest source in that area and how we might reduce that source? Thank you.
Yeah, that's another good question. So our data comes from a couple different sources, but one of them is the district's CEDARS stationary inventory data. So that would clearly only be US based, but it does include, it's primarily CARB's planning emission inventory, or what they call CPAM. And they do use a number of different data sets. And I do believe that some level of emissions from Mexico are included. How up to date it is somewhat of a question mark. But I do believe there might be some Mexico related emissions included. And the reason I say that is this same emission inventory was used for our federal ozone plan, and CARB did some analysis on the US-Mexico interaction in terms of ozone on our federal ozone plan that was completed in 2020. So I think there was some level of data included, but to be able to parse it out and be able to say this comes from Mexico and this is California, I'm not sure we could get that granular with the level that we have. But yeah, I do believe there's some of that included. If we will make sure that's in the workshop report that we have coming out, and everyone that's here in the meeting should get a copy of that by email. We'll make sure that that's clarified to be sure that is the case. We'll dig into it a little bit and make sure that yes, it is included, or perhaps it's not, and maybe I'm mistaken, but we'll make sure that's clarified in our workshop report.
Thank you, Nick. Great questions, Jenny. Any other questions or comments for Nick? I know that was a lot to cover. So Nick, I want to ask you a question. If you were to summarize in a couple sentences the importance of the regional air quality strategy and its relationship to the community emission reduction program that this group is working on, what would you say in those kind of two sentences, just to kind of high level the importance of that and the connection between the two?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, you know, the racks by law has to be kind of regionally kind of looked at. As you could tell in one of those slides, we have a number of kind of different priorities at APCD. Legislative, some are locally based through the SERPs, and then some are even required by state or federal law. So this plan is kind of trying to take all of that into account and trying to schedule what it needs to be done and how fast it needs to be done. And so what I can tell you with the work that's being done with the SERP in this steering committee is that, you know, once these measures are identified for what we can do in the border area, those measures from the SERP that get adopted here, those will certainly be incorporated into the next version of the RACs that we do. We do a RACs update every 3 years. It's been a little while since we did the last one, admittedly, but you know, on an ongoing basis, that's a continually updated document, and it kind of informs us resource-wise to better schedule and make sure that the priorities that we hear in bodies like this and the Portside Steering Committee, that those actions actually get done and scheduled, you know, at least for the measures that we do here at APCD. So hopefully that answers the question, but that's what I can say right now.
So yeah, most definitely. And so what the ideas and strategies that come out of this committee and the community of San Isidro are definitely going to inform the next one, is what you're saying.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, they will be all accounted for and scheduled and prioritized as in relation to everything else. But
Yep,
but yes, they will definitely be on the table so that we can, you know, try and get them done as quickly as we can.
Great, thank you, Nick. And I see Jenny has another question, so we'll go to Jenny and then we'll see if anyone else has a question before we move on to the next part of the agenda. Jenny?
Hi, I don't want to take up all the time here. Thank you again for the presentation. I just had a question, since you said that VOCs, the major source was consumer products. I'm kind of thinking from a public health perspective, we can sometimes change behavior quicker than we can change regulations. And so I'm just wondering, do you have any, is that a countywide number or is it a regional breakdown? Is this people in La Jolla using super expensive hair products, or, you know, where is it we can make a difference by changing behavior on those consumer VOCs? And is this something that the community could help with, or is this nothing that, or is this equally distributed among income groups, I guess, or among the San Diego County?
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head with the questions tonight, Jenny. These are great. So consumer products, the number I presented in the presentation was a San Diego County based number, but the same metric applies statewide. It is, well, for the most part, consumer products are really the largest source of VOC in the state, and we're talking about products like deodorants, hairsprays, you know, cleaners, you know, those sorts of things that we use every day, and we don't necessarily think they're having an impact on air pollution. But when you start adding up that every single person in the county uses those kinds of products, it tends to add up. And as you can see in the numbers, it's quite a bit. So, you know, just simple changes that you could adopt could help. You know, maybe using a low VOC or no VOC type product, either for perfume or cleaner or paint. You know, those certainly help. And if everyone were to start doing that over time, and over time, CARB is working to make sure that those products go as low VOC as possible, but they may not get there immediately. But if consumers do the right thing and start using these low or no VOC products in greater quantities, then that number will certainly go down. It could go down much quicker. So yeah, that is a consumer behavior one that could really be a simple way to reduce air pollution rather quickly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. Any other questions or comments before we transition to the next part of the agenda?
If not, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? Great. I just want to do a quick time check. We're about 10 minutes behind our agenda schedule, but that's okay. This part of the agenda, I want it to be a back and forth conversation. So I'll certainly be taking some moments to pause and engage you all in a conversation. The intention of this part of the agenda is really to report back to you all what we heard in the last two meetings, the meeting that was in person, and then there was a previous meeting that was virtual as well. To really hear from you all, did we get it right? Did we miss something? Are there other ideas or strategies or community priorities that should be included as well? Before I dive into sharing back what we heard and then hearing back from you all what else you'd like to see, I want to just do a brief recap. And this is going to be a refresher for folks who have been part of these meetings since the beginning. But the the Community Air Protection Program really has two components that work hand in hand together. One is the CERP, or the Community Emissions Reduction Program, which contains a number of elements in it, such as there's going to be a community profile on the community of San Isidro. There's going to be strategies that you all are going to co-develop together. There's going to be targets. How are we going to measure those targets? So those metrics. There's also going to be enforcement elements as well. And there's also going to be the California Environmental Quality Act. There's going to be a review of that assessment as well. The second part of the Community Air Protection Program, which we talked a lot about the last time we were together, is the CAMP, the Community Air Monitoring Plan. So you have, in the previous slide, you have the Community Emissions Reduction Program, which contains all these different elements that I shared with you all here today. And the CAMP, the Community Air Monitoring Plan, is essentially, how are we going to monitor? Where are we going to monitor? And why are we going to monitor those different sites? And so a lot of our conversation today is going to really revolve around helping inform the how, where, and why of the monitoring program today. So, and some of that is overlapped in the CERP, the Community Emissions Reduction Program. So one of the things that we heard from you all in terms of, and last time when you all had an opportunity to write on the boards or even share out loud to an APCD staff member, were what your health and safety concerns are. And we heard a lot from folks in terms of the importance of particularly protecting the young, folks who are elderly, folks who who are prone to respiratory illnesses, folks who have asthma, folks who essentially maybe have other health issues, and making sure that they are protected as we think about where to monitor as well. So where are those kind of sensitive individuals that need those protections? But we also heard a lot from you all as well in terms of what are the health issues or safety concerns that you all have and that you're experiencing day to day. We heard a lot about environmental odors, specifically from untreated sewage, right? That is coming across the border and making its way through the Tijuana River. These odors causing headaches, nausea, vomiting, watery eyes. But we also heard a lot about other emission sources like idling cars or trucks at the border, ATVs, that the four wheels that Border Patrol are using, that are really causing asthma episodes, concerns around lung disease and bronchitis and all. But would love to hear from you all. Are there other health and safety concerns and other groups of people that are of priority and that we should be thinking of when we're thinking about where these monitors should go. So I'd love to hear from folks in terms of if there's other health and safety concerns that maybe we didn't get down here, but that you'd like to also include. Love to hear from folks. Also, do these health and safety concerns reflect, right, the community members' experiences and priorities as well? No, it's been a long day.
Hi, this is Jenny Quintana. I don't live in the community. I'm a member of the committee, but I'm not a member of the community, so I don't want to put words in their mouth. But I do want to note that recent data has linked air pollution to risk of Alzheimer's, has linked air pollution to other neurological diseases, even depression in teens and admissions to hospitals. So I think I would definitely expand, concerns from lung diseases to cardiac diseases, and also to depression, as well as and risk of Alzheimer's, to type 2 diabetes, and also to adverse birth outcomes. I think there's enough data to really have those concerns. But again, I'm not a member of the community. I just want to bring that in from a scientific perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny. Yeah, some of the items that Jenny brought up, are these some concerns that community members have around, the potential impacts of poor air quality? Also, feel free to use the chat box, also your emoji signs as well. Yeah, Christopher.
Yeah, I think those are absolutely some concerns that we have. I grew up in the Imperial Valley, where we have some of the highest rates of asthma and allergies in the entire country due to the amount of pesticides we have. And right now I'm based out of Otay, and I actually work right next to the commercial crossing, where trucks will line up and idle for hour after hour, emitting diesel emission, these carcinogenic emissions. So that's why for me, it's very important that everyone come up with a policy or a plan, or the goal is truly to reduce emissions in all their forms, especially that of diesel particulate matter, and maybe not force zero emission only plan, which could, as a byproduct or consequence, mean diesel trucks stay on the road longer. Of course, the other alternative to diesel trucks right now are CNG trucks, and that could be, a very good viable option that would improve the community's health substantially in San Isidro and in Otay.
Yeah, appreciate your comment, Christopher. I saw Wendy's hand up. Wendy.
Sí, yo sí soy de la comunidad de San Isidro, y pues ese problema ya lo tenemos desde años. Yo tengo 10 años viviendo aquí en esta comunidad y siempre es lo mismo, los mismos malos olores. No puedes ni siquiera salir para afuera de tu casa porque el olor es bastante desagradable. También te duele la cabeza, no sé, no puedes estar a gusto ni en tu misma comunidad porque es un olor muy insoportable, que tiene años en lo mismo. Gracias. Y pues ya me gustaría muchísimo que en verdad ya se tomara la acción y que se trabajara para tratar de mejorar la calidad del aire y la calidad de la contaminación de aquí de San Isidro. Muchas gracias.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. And to that, I want to follow up, the top 3 things that we heard from the committee and community members in San Isidro were idling trucks and cars at the port of entries, the dust from Border Patrol, patrolling near the border, and then also the odors coming from the sewage runoff, right? That's going into the river itself. I'd love to hear from either Wendy or other folks as well that have experienced these things. Are there particular times of day or when the weather is hot or when it's just a rain that these things are made worse? Wendy.
And sorry to,
Pues cuando
perdón
hay
por
calor,
interrumpir.
empeora. Pero de todas maneras, hoy es en este día el clima está no tan caliente, pero el olor está. Aquí en todo San Isidro, por donde están los outlets. Yo vivo muy cerquita de los outlets, entonces eso es algo que creo que le puede hacer mucho daño a los niños. Aquí enfrente está la escuela Willow, donde hay como unos 900 niños en clases y la verdad el olor es muy desagradable. No puedes ni respirar, no sabes si estar afuera de tu casa te va a hacer bien o te vas a enfermar por ese olor tan desagradable.
Yeah, thank you
Gracias.
for sharing that, Wendy. And I see that there's a comment in the question and answer box I'll get to in a minute, but I'm going to go to Manuela. I'd love to hear, Manuela, if there's certain, I'm sorry, Domingo, were you going to interject?
Sorry to interrupt.
Muy
Yeah,
buenas tardes. Soy Manuela
perdón.
Castañeda.
Perdón,
Nosotros vivimos
perdón, Manuela, un segundo, por favor. Sorry,
okay.
just wanted to point out, Monique, that we have Magdalena has had her hand up for a bit. She's on the attendees list. Magdalena Cerda.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll definitely get to her. Let me go to Manuela and then I'll go to Magdalena as well. Manuela?
Sí. Yo vivo por el lado, viene siendo hacia el lado este hacia el lado este de donde están el santuario, donde están las aguas negras. Sí.
No, thanks so much for sharing, Manuela. And I'm going to go to Magdalena next. Let me change that. Magdalena.
Marisela.
¿Estoy ahí?
Sí.
Ok, gracias. Miren, yo trabajo con una organización comunitaria en la colonia Chilpancingo, Murúa, abajo de la ciudad industrial de Mesa de Otay. No soy miembro de este grupo, pero estoy aquí porque hay muchos estudios que se han hecho binacionales o varios estudios demuestran que esta comunidad es uno de los lugares más contaminados de aire en la región de Tijuana, ¿no? Entonces, Jenny hizo una apreciación muy interesante de cómo San Diego causa o el efecto de la contaminación tan enorme de San Diego está siendo llevada o compartida en Tijuana. Lo preocupante es que no hay estudios allá. No hay recursos allá, no hay programas allá para ayudar a esto. Pero sin embargo, todos estos problemas tienen una razón muy interesante, que es el comercio entre las dos ciudades y los dos países. Mucho de la contaminación en la comunidad viene de los camiones de carga y estos camiones de carga tienen doble placa. O sea, hay una enorme responsabilidad de este lado que se termina en la frontera. O sea, la frontera puede ser un sitio de mucha riqueza, pero también crea espacios grises, espacios o vacíos en cuanto a las soluciones, ¿no? ¿Por qué? Porque la relación económica que tenemos nuestras dos ciudades radica en que allá las empresas que van a trabajar no pagan los impuestos que pagan aquí, no pagan los salarios que se pagan del lado americano, no pagan seguros para manejar los programas de contaminación. Entonces, quien está pagando es la comunidad. Y estoy aquí un poquito por aprender ¿Qué están haciendo las comunidades del lado americano para trabajar sobre el problema de medio ambiente? Pero también se me hace interesante que veamos que esta dinámica de movilidad, de desarrollo económico que están atendiendo, no se queda del lado norte de la frontera. O sea, deberíamos pensar en cómo también trabajar en el lado mexicano. Gracias, es todo. Una observación más que nada.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Magdalena.
Monique, I
I'm
see
gonna-
that.
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was just going to say, I see that Margarita switched her question to, or her comments to the chat. If you want, I can read it out loud so
That
that
would
it
be
can get
perfect.
translated for the record. So I'm going to go to the Spanish channel to do that.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Muy bien, el comentario de Margarita es, si ojalá hubiera un cambio con respecto a San Isidro, no podemos abrir las ventanas ni la puerta. Ahora en temporada de calor, pasamos unos calores horribles a causa del olor terrible, teníamos que tener cerrado todo. En la noche nos despierta el olor espantoso, estamos desesperados. Yo vivo en Coral Gate, es una comunidad de casas pegadas a los outlets de las Américas. And that's it.
Thank you for sharing, Margarita. Margarita, are there any times of day or when it's hot or when it's cold or when it rains that the odor is made worse or even just the fumes are made worse? And you can feel free to type that in the chat too. I'd love to hear from folks in terms of that. Thanks, Domingo, for reading that out loud. Let's go to Marisela.
Buenas tardes a todos. Yo también soy miembro de aquí de la comunidad de San Isidro y yo estoy ubicada cerca de la frontera. Aquí también estamos padeciendo los malos olores que generalmente surgen en la noche. En la noche a veces está invadida la casa del mal olor si dejas una ventana abierta. Pasas a la sala y huele horrible. Y tú andas hasta buscando si dejaste la basura o no sé, porque ese olor está ya dentro de la casa, ¿sí? Este aroma o estos olores, pues yo creo que nos generan hasta estrés, nos generan mucha preocupación porque no sabemos ni de dónde surgen, ni qué daño nos puedan causar, y a los niños y a las personas de la tercera edad no sabemos, ¿sí? Ahora aquí que estamos cerca de la frontera, ahorita en esta época se nos pone pues bastante crítica la cosa, porque mucha gente está cruzando para venir a hacer sus compras y ya ahorita ya las líneas están de 3-4 horas otra vez o más. Entonces toda esa contaminación más los olores, pues entonces no sabemos ni para dónde hacernos. Y también pienso que cómo es posible que haya pasado tanto tiempo y todavía no se sepa de dónde surgen esos malos olores. Y también por qué se hacen las filas tan largas y eso nos genera la contaminación, no solo a nosotros los que vivimos aquí, sino a los mismos oficiales que están ahí respirando el aroma, porque ellos están ahí directamente, ni modo que a ellos no les haga daño. Ellos primerito reciben todo eso. Y también estamos preocupados porque a raíz de toda esta contaminación que se genera, pues surgen las alergias y el asma. Entonces estamos muy preocupados y nosotros les agradeceríamos mucho y les agradecemos que estén haciendo estos estudios de verdad. Los apreciamos mucho. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you said a number of things that are really important and key. Is one of the things that we don't always think about is just the constant worry that people experience not knowing the potential impact of what they're smelling. And I think, you know, that wears on someone's emotional and mental health. And I really appreciate you sharing that, Marisela. I see, Domingo, a question in the chat box, if you don't mind reading that out loud. And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
answering.
I'm gonna go to the Spanish channel so that it can be translated live. Esta pregunta es de Magdalena. ¿Los olores vienen de la planta de tratamiento de agua del Sila? And so Magdalena's asking if the odors are coming from the treatment plant, from the water treatment plant. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of the odors from sewage it could come either from the plant or from sewage spills at the Tijuana River Valley. And that's, I'm sorry, the Tijuana River. And that's an area where we're actually looking into getting more monitoring equipment and monitoring data in the near future so that we can get more information as to the potential pollutants that are in the air from there.
Thank you so much, Domingo, and great question. Speaking of which, I wanted to show a map. So the last time we met, there was a map that folks were writing on. We're putting little post-it notes in terms of areas that are priorities for them, or where they have certain concerns around those particular sites that could be potential monitoring sites. And so I'm going to review what we heard, but also if there's spaces that aren't represented on the map that you would like a pinpoint, we can add that right now today as well. So some of the things that we heard, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit of some of the locations. We heard that odor coming from this general area impacting homes and communities and families here was of a major concern, from industrial sewage and chemicals from untreated sewage. We also heard that in this general area right here, the dust from Border Patrol, either driving in the trucks or the four wheels as well, being a site of potential concern. We also heard from folks about the traffic from the outlets. So the cars going in and out of Las Americas outlets here being another kind of site of concern, and maybe also another potential good place to have a monitor as well. Folks brought up Willow Elementary and concerns around Willow Elementary. You could see all these freeway lanes being right here, right up against the elementary school, that folks having concerns. Also heard about, border crossing, port of entry, particulate matter, right? Those things that get, in your lungs, in your bloodstreams that cause health impacts from idling trucks and cars being a concern. So I'll go over here towards Otay. We also heard some concerns in general about, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, about the warehouse area where there's a lot of trucking and the traffic that's generated in and around the warehouse. So just kind of this general area, but more specifically around the Amazon warehouse, the trucks going in and out of there, the delivery trucks. And then also the Brownfield Municipal Airport here, how is that impacting communities around? And then one of the last sites, this particular port of entry, the idling cars and trucks coming in and out. And then the last spot, oops. Sorry to be making folks a little bit dizzy. Two last spots. We also heard from folks concerns around the impact of this particular corridor, the 905, and how that's impacting the nearby communities as well. And then lastly, this area right here, trucks being parked on the the bridge here, right off the 805 as well. That's just a brief snapshot of what we've heard so far, but I'd love to hear from you all. Are there any other areas in San Isidro Otay that are areas of concern or priority, in terms of maybe you're experiencing some air pollution in a particular area or odors in a particular area, or maybe there's an area where, you know, sensitive community groups are part of, like maybe there's a senior center or a school near somewhere that would be an important place to have some monitors as part of this program as well. Love to hear from folks in terms of where your priorities would be. Let's go to Jenny. Yeah.
Hi, I would just add a couple things. In San Isidro, there's also, and this is talking to residents as well, there's a freight train that comes through in the middle of the night along the trolley track and goes into Mexico, and that's, you know, a diesel freight train. So that would be anywhere along that track that your mouse is going along. Which really has the, you know, we've been monitoring black carbon, which is a marker for diesel particulate in the community, and seen these strange spikes about 1:30 in the morning, which is about the same time as the train comes through. So I don't know if it's caused by that, but it's certainly something that I'm interested in finding out more about. And then another thing might be that airfield over to the, it's off your screen actually, to the west near the coast, near the Tijuana Estuary Visitor Center. There's like a little airfield used by Border Patrol. I know it has a name, but I can't think what the name is. Up to the left more, left, like near the coast, near the north. And I'm also relatively old and I can't really see the screen either.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I think I saw it for a second, Monique. If you go north a little bit.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it's a little bit more north. There
Right
we go.
here?
Yeah,
At that strip. Yes.
that I know that the people that work at the Tijuana Nature Estuary Nature Center are very concerned about the exposures they're getting from those aircraft taking off and landing. And we did see very high daytime carbon monoxide concentrations years and years ago when we were measuring that during the days that they were operating and not the days they weren't operating. So I just wonder about that as well. And then if I might finish just way on the other side, I think there's other Amazon warehouses. I can't quite see the map from where you had noticed it over by Otay. But I believe that by the Enrique Fermi Bridge, there's just north of that, there's another Amazon warehouse, and it seems to be just expanding very rapidly. And I can't really see that well. So anyone who can see better, let me know. You can see the Enrique Fermi Bridge, I think, to the right. But there's another Amazon warehouse that's being built, is my understanding. And so that's just another issue.
Is it up here, I'm thinking?
I can't really see your screen. I'm sorry. I can find the address maybe or and chat it to you.
It says Amazon right here.
Yeah, maybe there's a Enrique Fermi Bridge. Is that what that bridge is right there with that big diamond interchange? I think it is. So it's just to the north of that.
Yep, it is. It is. Yeah, I
Yes,
think it's
yes,
this
that's
right
it.
here.
That's the one.
Yeah, so I just think that's another issue. It's just really been expanding as well. And as people had pointed out, I think that there's a lot of new construction and new housing going up in the Otay area, like right next to these trucks and busy roads, without concern from the developers about making a buffer zone, as far as I can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And we'll be sure to get those other sites too that I wasn't able to pinpoint in real time. I'll definitely make sure to get those sites as well as part of this. Love to hear from others as well. Are there other sites where there potential, like, you know, emitting pollution, but or sites where there are, you know, sensitive community members, you know, young children, elderly folks with respiratory illnesses? And this certainly is not the last time to engage in this conversation. So if other things come up, you can feel free to email me or call me, or we can have these discussions like in other meetings as well. Do folks feel like this map represents generally those kind of community concern areas? I'd love to hear from the folks at Casa Familiar, because I know that you've all been tracking these issues for quite some time now. If Leslie or Alejandro are there, I'd love to hear from your perspective in terms of what you've kind of been hearing throughout the years as well from community members in terms of concerns.
I can go ahead and just, I want to comment that one of the biggest concerns has always been the border wait times. And unless that border wait time changes, like the pollution is going to like persist and keep increasing. Like we have that other border, the Ped West, that has been closed and it's not being used. And that has like increased the amount of cars in general. I feel like it's also a lack of better public transportation, because a lot of people prefer to just drive their own vehicle instead of taking public transit. And that's also another thing.
So when you say a lack of good public transportation, are you saying in terms of like both sides of the border, in terms of like people getting to the border, but then also being able to navigate where they need to go once they're on the other side of the border?
Yeah, I feel like that would be a good way to put it also.
Thanks for sharing that. Alejandro.
Yeah, so I think for the transportation specifically, I think it's both, you know, especially with, like Leslie said, with Ped West left, I think it discourages people from crossing through pedestrian crossing instead of vehicle crossing. I think the rest of the concerns were pretty much like, at least the bigger ones were highlighted in the map. I think one thing to note, and it was already noted in the chat, it was the traffic from Las Americas, and not just at Las Americas. There's this bottlenecking on all exit, like taking the 5 to go back into Mexico, or through Calle Primera, through Willow, and also through Terrymart. So those 3 points are always impacted. I think Calle Primera, which is pretty close to Willow Elementary School, is usually, even if it's not peak traffic, it will usually have a lot of congestion, just because the right of way is not great. Yeah, around there,
This
yeah.
area right here?
A little more. It's like right there, where you have your
here?
mouse. The street that goes adjacent to parallel to the freeway.
And
This
and
one
I
right
can
here?
That one.
and I can
that
also
one,
help
right.
you identify all those exits later.
Okay.
Monique, I lived in the community, so I'm familiar with all those points Alejandro just pointed
Right.
out.
Yeah, and you know, also San Isidro East Boulevard tends to be pretty congested. The commercial side of San Isidro Boulevard, which is to the right, a little more to the right, crossing the freeway to the right. That area as well, the crossing itself, you know, the dropping off and picking up of people, tends to have a lot of vehicles just either waiting or trying to get out of there, but the traffic is just very slow. But I think most of the things were already captured on the map. And maybe perhaps another thing that wasn't captured was the like crossings at the trolley tracks, just because some of the trolley tracks tend to se tardan mucho, you know, like they're very delayed in that sense, where you can be stuck at a light for over 5 minutes or 10 minutes just waiting to make a left turn. And oh yeah, last comment. I think one of the biggest concerns as well is just I think I brought it up in another of the meetings, is like the lack of physical barriers to sources, such as in Willow Elementary, you know, their backyard is a chain link fence, but they have the freeway in the back, and not enough vegetation. Also, a lot of our parks are completely adjacent to freeways, like the what's it called, Howard Lane Park is one of those. So just those kind of things, I think, you know, like vulnerable populations are right next to the main sources. So that's another concern. I feel like it might not be specifically pollution related, but well, like the level of pollution, but also the level of exposure to those.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so identifying kind of those key areas that are near those emission sources, and like identifying, like, are there buffer areas? Are there, you know, vegetation or other things that could be put in place to protect those individuals? In the case of the school, right? You know, it could be vegetation with the inclusion of air filters, and with the, you know, other things as well to think about, you know, how those sensitive populations can be protected as well. So I think that was really helpful in terms of giving us some direction in terms of further identifying other sites as well that we want to bring back to you all to further refine and further prioritize. Love to hear from anyone else before we kind of move on to we're already, I think, 5 minutes till, so we're not gonna be able to get through all this conversation today. But love to hear from anyone else in terms of other important areas. Christopher, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say as well, the cars waiting on the US side of the border going into Mexico, this orange area, the small orange area that we have here, that's probably going to expand substantially, because for those who cross regularly, the Mexican side has implemented booths that I have not seen manned yet, but once those booths become manned and each vehicle starts getting the same sort of inspection routine as you get going into San Diego from Tijuana, those cars waiting are going to go way up the 805 and 5. That's going to create massive delays and cars idling on the US side.
So all the way up this here, as folks are trying to come in, there's going to be like kind of checkpoints going in.
Right,
is what you're saying.
Those are actually, sorry to interrupt, but those are actually US inspection points. They want
the US inspection point. Okay, so
they're right before. Yeah, they're right before the entrance into Mexico, and they're the last inspection for US customs.
Right, but they're definitely, I think I want to, you know, echo Chris' concerns that if they're turned on, you know, and they're actually being used, it is going to create a whole lot more of traffic.
Yeah, the impact should be the same.
Right.
Absolutely. Did I see someone's hand up? All right. This has been a great conversation in terms of, you know, identifying other, you know, health concerns, getting some more information in terms of what times of day some of these safety issues are experienced much worse. And then we also got some really great feedback of additional locations to further investigate, and potential locations as well for upcoming monitoring stations as well. We didn't quite get to this part of the agenda in terms of discussing the role of this committee, and then discussing how information could be shared. But we can table that until the next time we meet and continue the conversation as well. I want to make sure we have a moment to transition and allow for, I have so many papers on my desk here, but allow for public comments as well. If there's been another issue that maybe wasn't on the agenda that the community would like to, or a committee member would like to also provide public testimony on, or public comment on. So I just want to open it up and see if there's anyone who'd like to give a public comment, maybe to something that wasn't shared already. Yeah, Leslie.
I feel like I should have mentioned in the beginning, but regarding the mobile monitoring, it's kind of like a question / comment, like if it continues, or if they decide to do it again maybe doing it within a time frame that's like earlier, because that's when most of the traffic we experience there is, and also in the evenings. Just wanted to point that out.
That's a really, really great comment there, Leslie, in terms of the timing being really important in terms of the pollution impacts and monitoring. I don't know if anyone's still here from the California Air Resources Board that could maybe follow up on that comment. Here, I see someone. All right, Liliana.
I actually, could you repeat that one more time? I think it's related to the mobile monitoring or the monitoring study. Yanju and has left for the evening, but I'm still here. So.
Yeah, hi Liliana. Yeah, so like how the mobile monitoring was cut short, but just like if it's decided to restart that or redo that, maybe like an earlier time and also a later time to do the monitoring might be a better, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I get, so basically if they're able to come back with the mobile monitoring equipment and come back for another campaign, it would be, you're suggesting that they come and instead of just, you know, 9, I think they were kind of going out there 10 a.m. to maybe 2 p.m. daily. So I think they had like 4 or 5 good days of that. I'm hearing that different times of days would be beneficial. And I agree that the traffic in the afternoon going southbound is very different. And yeah, so I'll take that back to the team that's working on that. And hopefully they are able to come back and help with some mobile monitoring in San Isidro.
Yeah, thank you so much. Domingo, I see a couple of comments in the chat. I don't know if it's part of the comments here as well.
It was complementing some of the information regarding the smells. I translated one of them. It's basically from Irma about crossing into Tijuana. The smells are very strong. It even turns the stomach to those who cross. And then the other comments, would it be possible to work with Tijuana on those smells? Because those smells come all the way to San Isidro. So it's regarding the smells from the Tijuana River.
All right, great. Any other public comment? So, you know, anything that folks like to share, maybe that wasn't discussed tonight, but relevant to this group. I see Nicolas. Oh, let me allow you to talk here. Sorry about that. Okay, Nicolas.
Hi, Monique. Thank you. And so sorry for jumping in on this kind of late. You know, I think Jenny Quintana mentioned this earlier, and I'm not sure if it was logged during that activity where you were mapping locations where we might want to do monitoring. But I just wanted to highlight again and echo her point that, you know, we're potentially creating EJ communities along the 905 freeway. And so I wanted to flag certain housing developments that are happening and sprouting up in that area. I think the La Brisa Tri-Point homes along the 805 freeway would be a good spot. Also, some of the housing communities that are sprouting up next to San Isidro High School might be good locations if you all are considering new spots for monitors. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. And even though I'm not able to get everything in real time, we're taking notes, and I'm going to update this map for sure with those places that you've mentioned. All right. Any other public comments for this evening? All right. Seeing that there aren't any more comments, in terms of next steps, our next meeting is going to be on January 24th. tentatively. It's going to be a virtual meeting, but we'll be checking in with each of you. I'll be checking in with each of you, wanting to get to know you all better, as well as some, in December, we'll schedule some one-on-one conversations. But the next meeting is going to be on January 24th of 2023. Can't believe it's going to be 2023. We're also going to be sending out a survey to the committee members to ask about if folks are interested in meeting in person this upcoming year. If so, how often would folks like to meet in person? Every other month, once a quarter, and then also checking in terms of, what times would work best to meet in person versus virtual as well. So just hearing from you all in terms of your preferences of, meeting next year in person or virtual, and the times that work best for you to do so as well. So a survey is going to be coming out relatively, maybe in the next couple of weeks, maybe after the holiday next week, so it doesn't get lost in people's emails. And again, really thank you all for being here this evening. I see Magdalena's hand. I just want to maybe circle back to you before we adjourn. Magdalena?
Sí, es para informar sobre un comentario que está ahí. Alguien puso que deberíamos trabajar, o se debería trabajar con el lado mexicano para el problema de los olores del río Tijuana. Yo lo escribí en el chat, pero no lo leyeron. Ya hay un presupuesto enorme que los dos países aprobaron. Cada uno tiene su propio presupuesto, México y Estados Unidos, y obras ya muy definidas para eliminar así casi definitivamente los problemas de la contaminación en toda la cuenca del río Tijuana. O sea, incluye plantas de tratamiento, incluye máquinas de bombeo. Esto es un proyecto de una enorme inversión por el lado americano y una enorme inversión del lado americano. Para obtener la información se pueden poner en contacto con la Oficina de Asuntos Fronterizos de la EPA o con el SILA, o sea, la Comisión de Límites y Aguas Internacional. Ellos están responsables de esas obras y de que se ejecuten las dos partes, porque es una parte de la relación entre los dos países. Entonces, yo creo que van a poder ver o sentir las diferencias en San Isidro.
Thank you for sharing that, Magdalena. And we're also saving all the comments in the chat as well to make sure we record that and look at those comments as well as the planning process moves forward. So thank you for sharing that. With that, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Domingo to close us out and see if there's anything else that we need to cover before we head out this evening. And I appreciate your time. I know we went about 10 minutes over, so really appreciate you all hanging in there. Domingo?
Thank you, Monique. Nothing really much to add, just to again thank everybody for their continued engagement. And even though we're not going to see each other in a meeting next month, I really encourage everyone to continue the dialogue with us. If there's anything that comes up during that time that we don't meet, please feel free to reach out to us, reach out to me or to Monique directly. And we'd be happy to continue the dialogue to capture your input. And we certainly look forward to seeing everybody again in January. So thanks again for all the work that you've done with us throughout these months this year.
Thank you all. Be well. And I'll be reaching out to you all in the next couple of weeks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Good night. Buenas
Good
noches.
night.
Gracias, que pase buenas noches.
Buenas noches a
Adiós.
todos.
Buenas noches a todos.
Gusto en